My parents secretly allowed my brother to steal my $4,000 hotel refund to upgrade his own room, then physically slapped me at the airport when I refused to carry his fake designer luggage. So, I used my frequent flyer miles to upgrade to first class on their exact flight, locked my itinerary, and left them stranded in economy while I orchestrated a permanent, devastating end to their entire fake luxury lifestyle. I am Marcus, 29 years old. For 29 years of my existence, I operated under the exhausting delusion that tolerating my family's blatant, unapologetic favoritism toward my younger brother, Leo, 27, was just a mandatory tax I had to pay for basic peace. I genuinely thought that if I kept my head down, worked incredibly hard, and stayed out of their way, they would eventually respect me as an equal. But exactly 1 month ago, that fragile illusion was violently and permanently shattered when my own father slapped me across the face in the middle of Terminal 5 at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. My massive, unforgivable crime? I simply refused to act as an unpaid pack mule for my 27-year-old brother's absurd mountain of counterfeit luxury luggage. As I stood there with my left cheek burning like a lit match and my ears ringing with a high-pitched whine, my mother did not rush to my defense. She did not scream at my father. She simply looked at me with cold, hard disappointment, and told me I was nothing but a burden to the family. They publicly humiliated me in front of hundreds of strangers. But there is one crucial thing they did not know as they laughed at my pain. They had absolutely no idea I had accumulated over 300,000 frequent flyer miles through my high-paying corporate tech job, giving me the power to make a silent, devastating move. A move that would leave them humiliated, financially drained, and begging for my forgiveness while I watched them suffer from 30,000 feet in the air. To understand the absolute insanity of this airport confrontation, you have to understand the toxic hierarchy of my family. Growing up in the affluent suburbs of Chicago, the dynamic was established early and enforced with brutal consistency. Leo was the golden child, the undeniable center of the universe. I was the shadow, the afterthought, the built-in insurance policy in case Leo ever needed something. My parents, Arthur and Evelyn, never even tried to hide their extreme favoritism. It was woven into the very fabric of our daily lives, as casual and routine as pouring a cup of morning coffee. When I graduated high school as valedictorian with a perfect GPA, they skipped the ceremony entirely because Leo had a minor stomachache that miraculously cured itself the second I walked back through the front door holding my diploma. They promised a steak dinner to celebrate, but conveniently forgot. Yet, when Leo managed to scrape a C in high school biology, they threw a massive catered backyard barbecue and bragged to the entire neighborhood about his immense potential in the medical field. The turning point that truly defined our sick dynamic happened on my 16th birthday. I spent 2 solid years working after school at a local hardware store, scrubbing floors and dealing with angry contractors, saving every single dollar in a rusty coffee tin. My parents told me that giving me a car would ruin my character, so I bought a rusty, 10-year-old Toyota Corolla. It smelled faintly of wet dog, and the heater barely worked during the brutal Chicago winters, but it was mine. 2 years later, Leo turned 16. My parents didn't hand him a lecture on work ethic, they handed him the keys to a brand new Audi R8 with a giant red bow on the hood, draining their savings to do it. Your brother is highly sensitive, Marcus, my mother told me while chopping vegetables, refusing to meet my eyes. You are so independent, you know how to survive anything. Leo needs a little extra support to feel confident. But the most devastating betrayal regarding that old Toyota didn't come to light until last year. I ran into Chloe, Leo's ex-girlfriend, at a crowded downtown coffee shop. They had a messy breakup because Leo refused to get a job and expected her to fund his lavish lifestyle. Chloe looked incredibly guilty as she stirred her latte. Marcus, I always felt terrible about your old car back in high school, she whispered. I frowned, confused, telling her it was just a piece of junk that broke down. Her eyes widened in sheer disbelief. Marcus, it didn't just break down. Leo sabotaged it. He was jealous. You got a car before him. He loosened the battery cables, poured sugar in your gas tank, and he even messed with your brake lines just to see you panic before driving on the highway. My stomach turned a heavy lead. That could have killed me. But the absolute worst part? Your parents knew all about it, Chloe said, looking genuinely sick. I was standing in the garage when your dad caught him holding a wrench under your hood. Your dad yelled at first, but then your Aunt Beatrice chimed in, saying punishing Leo would ruin his fragile self-esteem and that you were an ungrateful son anyway. So, they bought Leo the Audi to keep him out of trouble, and they let you keep driving a verified death trap. My own flesh and blood had covered up actions that actively put my life in physical danger just to protect Leo's feelings. From that day forward, I permanently stopped trying to win their approval. I threw myself entirely into my career. I graduated debt-free, landed a massive salary as a lead data architect, maxed out my 401k, and bought a beautiful condo in a quiet, upscale neighborhood. Meanwhile, Leo dropped out of 2 colleges and lived in our parents' basement, claiming he was waiting for a CEO-level job. My parents bankrolled his pathetic life and increasingly demanded I pay his skyrocketing credit card bills. I always refused. That brings us to the infamous St. Lucia trip. My father's 59th birthday was approaching. For 6 months, the family group chat buzzed with plans for a grand vacation to a luxury resort in the Caribbean. I initially declined, knowing I'd be expected to pay for expensive dinners and manage logistics while they praised Leo. But my father called me directly, sounding old and vulnerable. "Marcus, please come. It would mean the world to me to have both my sons there. I will pay for your flight and hotel." Against my better judgment, I agreed. I desperately needed a vacation anyway. The week before the trip was an absolute nightmare. My tech company was hit with a massive data vulnerability. If the data leaked, we were looking at millions in damages. As the lead architect, I spent 48 hours straight staring at complex SQL code, drinking terrible office coffee, fighting off a ruthless rival coworker named Damon who wanted to steal my upcoming VP promotion. I successfully patched the breach and finalized the report at 3 a.m., on the exact day of our flight. I was physically and mentally destroyed, my eyes bloodshot, hands shaking from toxic amounts of caffeine. But I methodically packed my single, efficient carry-on bag and headed to the airport in an Uber, dreaming of a private, quiet hotel room where I could sleep for 3 days straight. While watching the Chicago city lights blur past, my phone buzzed with an automated email from the Sugar Beach Resort in St. Lucia. Subject: urgent. Your reservation has been cancelled. I blinked, rubbing my burning eyes, sure I had misread it. I called the hotel customer service line immediately. After 10 agonizing minutes on hold, a polite representative explained the nuclear bomb that had just been dropped on my life. "Yes, Mr. Marcus. That reservation was officially cancelled yesterday evening by a Mr. Leo. He requested that your $4,000 refund be fully applied to upgrade his own standard room to our presidential luxury suite. According to his notes, he stated you would be staying in the living room area of his suite on the pull-out sofa." My blood pressure spiked so hard I saw spots. I had paid for that room with my own money because my dad conveniently forgot to book it. My brother had stolen my hard-earned refund to upgrade himself and fully expected me to sleep on a terrible sofa during my only vacation of the year. I immediately called my mother. She answered on the second ring, sounding sickeningly cheerful. When I demanded answers, her tone vanished into a disappointed martyr act. "Marcus, please do not start unnecessary drama. Leo just wanted a nicer view. The sofa is practically a real bed. You make a massive salary, you should be happy to share your blessings with your struggling brother. Do not ruin this trip for your father." She hung up on me. I walked into Terminal 5, dragging my feet, exhausted beyond measure. When my family finally arrived 45 minutes late, they looked like a chaotic traveling circus. My father was pushing a groaning cart with 4 giant suitcases. My mother dragged 2 more. And Leo? Leo was strolling casually behind them holding an iced matcha latte, scrolling mindlessly on his phone, not carrying a single item. "Are we moving to the Caribbean permanently?" I asked dryly. Leo rolled his eyes. "I need options, Marcus. I'm shooting important content for my socials. People judge you based on what you wear." I knew for an absolute fact that his high-end luggage was entirely counterfeit, bought on shady websites to portray a fake wealthy lifestyle. "We need to hurry," my father barked, sweating profusely. "Marcus, grab these 3 bags right now. Leo cannot risk pulling a muscle in his back right before the trip. He has a sensitive spine." I stared at him, letting the absurdity hang in the air. "I am not touching those bags. I have my own carry-on. Leo is 27 years old. He can carry his own fake gear." The underlying tension completely snapped. We argued bitterly to the check-in counter, where my dad was hit with massive overweight baggage fees. Because they were so late, we had to sprint to the security line. That is when Leo threw an epic tantrum because TSA pulled him aside to search his fake Louis Vuitton backpack. My father demanded I clean up their mess and carry all 7 of their heavy bags through the scanner. When I firmly refused, my father turned around, his face a dark, angry crimson, and slapped me violently across the face. The sound was a sharp, cracking noise that silenced the chaotic hum of the security line. My head snapped to the side. The heavy canvas strap of my backpack bit into my tired shoulder. I stood perfectly still, the physical sting radiating down to my jawline. A businessman in a Patagonia vest lowered his phone. A mother shielded her toddler. Leo let out a short, mocking laugh. "Oh my God, is he actually crying? If he's going to throw a tantrum like a toddler, he can sit with the janitors on the plane. Do your job, Marcus." I waited for my mother to act like a mother. Instead, she let out a dry chuckle. "Marcus, just do what your father asks. You are just being a burden right now." A uniformed airport security officer, Officer Vance, stepped out from the crowd, his hand firmly near his duty belt. "Sir, did you just strike this young man?" My father's arrogant face went completely pale. He stammered, terrified of losing his pristine public reputation. "No, officer, just a family disagreement. We are stressed about our flight." Officer Vance looked directly at me, seeing the angry red handprint on my skin. He was giving me an out. I could press charges, demand a lawyer, and watch their precious vacation burn in a spectacular legal fire. But as I looked at my parents, and then at Leo's smug face morphing into fear, an icy clarity washed over me. Getting my dad arrested would tether me to them for months in court. I wanted absolute, permanent freedom. I am fine, officer, I said quietly, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. But, I will not be traveling with these people today. My mother's jaw physically dropped. Marcus, do not be ridiculous. Get those bags. I looked her dead in the eyes, stripping away every ounce of obedience I had ever shown. No, I will not. Without a backward glance, I turned my back on them and walked away, leaving them standing there with 7 oversized bags they couldn't carry, a highly suspicious police officer, and a crowd of whispering onlookers snapping photos. I found a quiet corner overlooking the tarmac and dropped my head into my hands. The physical pain was fading, but the emotional dam had burst. I looked at my phone. The family group chat was exploding. Dad, stop embarrassing us. You are ruining everything. Mom, grow up and apologize to your father right now. Leo. Security made me open my bags. You are a selfish loser. They still fundamentally believed I would absorb the abuse and fall back into line. They thought my silence was surrender. I opened my airline app. Because of my demanding job, I had racked up hundreds of thousands of miles. I clicked on our flight to St. Lucia. The economy cabin was full, but glowing brightly was a single available seat in Polaris first class. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. I applied my miles and confirmed the upgrade. I hoisted my backpack and walked briskly to the premium customer service desk. A sharply dressed agent named Claire looked up. Hi Claire, I just upgraded my seat to first class on the flight to St. Lucia, but I have an urgent security request. There are 3 passengers in economy: Arthur, Evelyn, and Leo. They are my estranged family who just physically assaulted me at security. I need you to lock my passenger record immediately. Under no circumstances can they be told I am on this plane. Claire's expression hardened into fierce professionalism. Consider it done, sir. I have flagged your profile as a high-privacy traveler. The crew will be notified. No one will give them a single shred of information. I spent the next hour in the VIP lounge, drinking strong black coffee, and ignoring my father's frantic texts threatening to cut me off. When first-class boarding was called, I bypassed the chaotic economy line where my father was sweating and Leo was complaining about his cramping shoulder. I walked down the jet bridge and sank into a massive, luxurious privacy pod. A flight attendant handed me a crystal glass of champagne. 10 minutes later, general boarding began. I watched the reflection in the window as my family marched down the aisle. My father was huffing, dragging Leo's heavy bag. As they passed through first class, my father stopped. He suspected I was up here and took a menacing step toward my pod. Instantly, the lead flight attendant blocked his path. Sir, keep moving. Your seats are in the main cabin. Defeated and humiliated under the glares of business executives, he trudged back to row 36. I reclined my seat to a full flatbed and closed my eyes. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. And the storm I was about to unleash hadn't even started. Update 1. I woke up somewhere over the Caribbean Sea. The constant buzzing anxiety that usually accompanied my family had vanished. The woman sitting across the aisle, an elegant corporate lawyer named Harper, noticed I was awake. Over a premium lunch service, the entire story poured out of me. Harper listened intently and then delivered a psychological breakdown that changed my life. Marcus, your family operates exactly like a toxic, failing corporation, she said, her voice steady over the jet engines. Your father is the CEO managing PR. Your mother is HR, spinning every terrible thing into a fabricated story of loyalty. And your brother is the useless board member who produces nothing but consumes all the dividends. You are the working capital. You are the reliable employee they exploit. When you refused to carry those bags, you broke their unspoken contract. Your father slapped you because you took away his control. When we land, they will use anger, then guilt, then financial threats to drag you back. You have to stand your ground. Her words were mental armor. When we touched down in St. Lucia, I made absolutely sure I was the first passenger off the aircraft. I completely bypassed the chaotic baggage claim where I knew my father would be wrestling with 7 oversized suitcases, his blood pressure skyrocketing. I walked out into the warm tropical air, went to the VIP rental counter, and booked a sleek, dark blue Jeep Wrangler. I dropped the top down, drove down the scenic coastline, and booked a stunning, high-floor oceanfront private villa at Jade Mountain Resort completely on the opposite side of the island from where my family was staying. It cost a small fortune, but my mental health was worth every penny. For 2 entire days, I lived entirely for myself. I turned my phone off. I went surfing, ate fresh seafood, and hiked the towering emerald peaks of the Pitons. I felt the heavy, toxic weight of my family physically lifting off my shoulders. But on the morning of the 3rd day, I knew I couldn't hide forever. The point of a boundary is enforcing it directly. I sat at an outdoor cafe, ordered a strong coffee, and powered on my phone. It froze as 84 notifications flooded in. 42 missed calls, 35 texts, 7 frantic voicemails. Harper had been terrifyingly accurate. They followed her predicted pattern perfectly. Dad's first texts were pure aggression. Where are you? Get to the baggage claim. I am not paying for a taxi. Thank you for watching. Answer immediately or there will be severe consequences regarding your inheritance. A laughable threat since I didn't need his money. Mom's text shifted to suffocating guilt. Marcus, your father's blood pressure is dangerously high. How can you abandon us? We told the hotel to set up the sofa bed for you. Just come apologize and we can move past this. Leo's texts were unhinged entitlement. You are the worst brother ever. Dad canceled his main credit card because he thinks it was compromised at the airport, so I can't order the good room service. Come here and pay for our dinner tonight since you ruined everything. I felt absolutely nothing but cold, clinical indifference. I opened the group chat and typed a single decisive message. I am perfectly safe. I am staying at a different resort. I will meet you all for dinner tonight at the Cliffside Grill at 7 p.m. sharp. We have a lot to discuss. Do not be late. My father replied instantly, we will be there. You have a lot of explaining to do, young man. I spent the afternoon preparing for war. This wasn't a family dinner, it was a high-stakes corporate negotiation, and I held every piece of leverage. I arrived at the upscale open-air restaurant 15 minutes early, requesting a large private table near the far edge of the patio to ensure total control of the environment. At exactly 7:05 p.m., they walked in. My father looked incredibly tense in a stiff Hawaiian shirt. My mother looked exhausted, clutching her purse. Leo strolled in wearing fake designer sunglasses despite the fading light, carrying that ridiculous fake Louis Vuitton backpack. My father pulled out his chair aggressively. Are you completely done throwing this pathetic little tantrum? He demanded, skipping pleasantries. You spent 2 days acting incredibly selfish. I took a slow sip of my sparkling water. I am a 29-year-old lead data architect with a massive salary, Dad. I am perfectly capable of surviving on my own. Which brings us to the first item on tonight's agenda. I locked eyes with Leo, who was trying to take a selfie. Leo, put the phone down. Explain to Mom and Dad exactly why I didn't come to your hotel. Leo scoffed. Because you're a dramatic loser who ran away like a coward over some bags. Wrong, I said, my voice cutting through the ambient noise like a knife. I didn't go to your hotel because while I was in the Uber in Chicago, I received an email confirming that my private, ocean view room had been canceled. And the $4,000 refund for that room, the room I paid for entirely with my own salary, was immediately applied to upgrade your standard room to a luxury suite. My father's angry expression faltered. He looked genuinely confused and turned to Leo. What is he talking about? You told us the hotel overbooked his room and graciously offered an upgrade for the inconvenience. He lied to your face, I stated flatly. I called the hotel. Leo actively canceled my room, told the agent I would sleep on his pull-out sofa, and stole my money to fund his luxury experience. He expected me to blindly accept it. My mother immediately jumped into PR mode. Marcus, keep your voice down. Leo just made a tiny silly mistake with the booking system. You make so much money anyway, it shouldn't matter. He just wanted a nicer view for the family. It is not a mistake, Mom, it is blatant theft, I corrected her firmly. And it perfectly illustrates this family. I am expected to finance Leo's delusions of grandeur while being treated like the hired help. Watch your tone. My father warned, pointing a thick finger at me. One little slap at the airport because you were being highly insubordinate, and suddenly you think you can talk down to us. I established the hierarchy in this family. I leaned forward, closing the physical distance. One little slap. Is that how you justify committing physical assault in a federal airport, Dad? Would you slap your boss at the firm? No. You only hit me because you fundamentally think you own me. Speaking of respect, I pivoted smoothly, watching my mother flinch. Let's talk about my old Toyota Corolla, the one I bought with my own money when I was 16. My mother blinked rapidly. What does that piece of junk have to do with anything? I ran into Chloe a few months ago, I said casually, watching Leo's face instantly drain of all color. He looked like he was going to vomit. We had a fascinating conversation. She told me exactly why my car kept breaking down. She told me how you, Leo, used to sneak out late at night to loosen my battery cables, pour sugar in my gas tank, and intentionally cut my brake lines because you were jealous. My mother gasped loudly, a trembling hand flying to her mouth. But my father didn't look shocked. He looked trapped. And the absolute best part, Dad, my voice dropped to a dangerous register. Chloe told me that you caught him doing it. You caught him in the garage holding a wrench, actively sabotaging the vehicle I drove on the busy highway every single day. And instead of calling the police or protecting my life, you listened to Aunt Beatrice. You bought him a brand new Audi R8 to protect his fragile self-esteem, and you let me keep driving a verified death trap. A heavy, suffocating silence slammed down on our table. The only sound was the crashing waves below. "Marcus, you have to understand." My father stumbled, his booming authority completely gone. "Leo was going through a dark, depressed phase. You were always so strong, so independent. We knew you could handle a little adversity." "Adversity?" I almost laughed at the sheer delusion. "You actively risked my life to protect his feelings. That is severe criminal neglect. That is exactly why I will never, ever trust either of you again." My mother pleaded, thick tears spilling over her cheeks. "We did our absolute best. Do not throw your family away over the past." "The past?" I scoffed, pointing at Leo's bag. "He just stole $4,000 from me yesterday. And today, he threw a tantrum at security over a backpack full of fake designer clothes. Did you know that, Dad? You paid hundreds in overweight fees for counterfeit garbage he bought on shady websites just so he can pretend to be a rich influencer." Leo's face turned splotchy red. He slammed his fist on the table. "Shut up, you're just a boring corporate drone. I know you don't have a job." I fired back without mercy. "I know you live in a basement like a child. I know you are a parasite feeding off their retirement funds." My father slammed his hand down, rattling the silverware. "Enough. If you want to be part of this family, if you want a single dime of your inheritance, you will pack your bags, move into the suite with us tonight, and pay the bill for this expensive dinner." I looked at the man who had controlled me through fear for 29 years, and I felt nothing but deep pity. "Keep your inheritance, Dad. I have my own real estate. I have my own fully funded 401k. I don't need a single penny. In fact, once your savings run out funding Leo's fake lifestyle, do not ever come knocking on my door." I stood up, pulled a crisp $100 bill from my wallet, and dropped it on the table. "Enjoy the rest of your lovely vacation. And Leo, you are going to have to carry your own bags on the long flight home." I turned and walked off the patio. I didn't look back once. The night air had never felt so incredibly clean. Update 2. The morning after that explosive dinner, I woke up feeling incredibly light. The heavy, rusting anchor of seeking my parents' approval was completely severed. Around 9 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown local number. "Marcus. I am sitting at the coffee shop in the main lobby of your hotel. I am completely alone. Please come down for 5 minutes. No yelling. Dad." I debated ignoring it, but a small part of me wanted to see him without his captive audience. I walked down to the expansive lobby. My father was sitting near a massive palm tree, looking 10 years older. The arrogant posture was gone. He was just a tired, aging man staring blankly into a paper cup. I sat across from him and didn't say a word. "I am not going to ask you to come back to our hotel," he said quietly, "and I won't insult your intelligence by defending what Leo did. I forced him to transfer the stolen money back to your bank account early this morning. You should see it pending." I checked my phone. The $4,000 refund had been processed. I gave a short nod. "I spent my entire adult life trying to build a picture-perfect family," my father continued, his voice tight. "When you were born, you were so easy, you excelled, but Leo was difficult. He struggled violently. Your mother and I panicked. We started overcompensating to fix him, pouring all our resources into propping him up, assuming you would be perfectly fine. Being fine doesn't mean I didn't need a father," I said bluntly. "It doesn't mean I deserve to be treated like a disposable asset." He finally looked up, and for the first time in 29 years, I saw genuine, unmasked regret. "I know. Slapping you at the airport was the absolute lowest, most shameful moment of my life. I lost total control because I realized in that split second that I have absolutely no power over you anymore. You built a massive life completely without my help, and it terrified me to realize I was unnecessary to you. It didn't magically erase 29 years of neglect or excuse the physical assault, but it was a massive crack in his lifelong delusion. I accept your apology, Dad," I told him calmly. "But the boundaries remain firmly in place. I will not have any relationship with Leo until he gets serious professional help, and I will not tolerate any more manipulation from Mom. If you want a relationship with me, it will be entirely on my terms." He nodded slowly, his shoulders sagging. "I understand completely." We parted ways. I spent the rest of my vacation exploring the island, then flew back to Chicago, utilizing my miles for first class once again. I returned to my corporate life with unbreakable focus. But the real, devastating fallout didn't fully materialize until a few weeks after we all returned home. That is when Leo's entire house of cards finally collapsed into dust. My father, deeply affected by our sobering conversation, finally made a hard decision. He completely cut off Leo's credit cards and revoked his access to the family trust. He sat Leo down and gave him exactly 30 days to find a real paying job, or he was getting permanently kicked out of the basement. Leo, panicking because his fake luxury lifestyle was imploding, managed to secure an entry-level marketing job through a generous family friend. The job lasted exactly 2 weeks. Leo was fired for extreme hostile insubordination. He refused to do basic tasks, talked back to the senior manager, and spent hours in the break room filming TikToks, loudly claiming the work was vastly beneath his unique intellect. Desperate, broke, and completely out of options, Leo did the unthinkable. He attempted to commit identity theft. Because my father cut him off, Leo tried to use my social security number, which he memorized years ago, to open a massive Chase Sapphire credit card line to fund a trip to Dubai. He didn't know that, immediately after the hotel cancellation incident in St. Lucia, I had placed a permanent, impenetrable freeze on all my credit files with all 3 major bureaus. The application was instantly flagged as fraudulent. When the bank notified me of the highly suspicious activity originating from my parents' home IP address, I didn't just let it slide. I filed a formal police report for identity theft and fraud. The local Chicago PD showed up at my parents' house with a warrant. The absolute climax of this entire saga happened when Leo, out on bail and completely unhinged, showed up unannounced at my corporate office building in downtown Chicago. My parents were with him, looking deeply humiliated. I was sitting in my corner office when security called my private line. I took a deep breath, straightened my tie, and took the elevator down to the massive marble lobby. And Leo was pacing furiously. "Marcus!" he screamed, his arrogant voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Drop the charges right now, you are ruining my life, and I need a job. Your company is hiring data analysts. Tell your boss to hire me with a massive starting salary so I can pay my legal fees." I just stared at him. The sheer, blinding audacity was almost mathematically impressive. I looked past him to my parents. My mother stared at the floor. My father shook his head slightly, communicating silently that he had absolutely no part in this deranged demand. "Leo," I said, my voice completely flat, maintaining total professional composure in front of the muscular security guards and whispering colleagues, "This is a multi-million-dollar tech firm. We hire industry experts who actually know how to code. You couldn't keep a basic marketing job for 2 weeks, and you just committed federal fraud trying to steal my identity. I wouldn't hire you to clean the keyboards in the IT department. And I am absolutely not dropping the charges." Leo's face contorted with pure unhinged rage. He looked wildly at our mother, desperately waiting for her to launch a massive guilt trip to save him. But my mother stayed completely silent. She looked at the highly polished marble floors. She looked at the stern security guards. She looked at the successful, fiercely independent man standing in front of her in a tailored suit. And she finally, truly realized she had absolutely no ammunition left to fire. "Let's go home, Leo," my father said heavily, grabbing his arm with a firm, unyielding grip. "Marcus is absolutely right. You have to figure this out on your own. We are done." I stood in the center of the lobby with my hands in my pockets and watched them physically drag my kicking, crying brother out of the revolving doors and onto the busy, unforgiving streets of Chicago. The parasite had officially, permanently been severed from the host. 6 quiet, productive months have passed since that explosive incident. Without the constant, draining mental load of managing my family's toxic expectations, my career skyrocketed. My boss noticed my massive shift in focus. I successfully launched the security protocol, saving the company millions. As a direct result, I was officially promoted to Vice President of Data Engineering. It came with a massive salary increase, significant equity, and a beautiful corner office with a view of Lake Michigan. My relationship with my parents underwent a massive fundamental shift. The strict boundaries I established remain entirely intact. I no longer attend every mandatory gathering. I only answer calls when convenient. If a conversation veers into manipulation, I simply hang up. It was difficult at first, but unwavering consistency was the absolute key. Leo, predictably, spiraled. Facing probation for the fraud charges, he was forced to take a minimum wage job working retail at a local electronics store. He constantly complains on his dying social media accounts about how profoundly unfair the world is. We have not spoken a single word to each other. I do not miss him, and I certainly do not pity him. The ultimate test of our new dynamic came on the evening of my 30th birthday. I agreed to meet my parents for a celebratory dinner at Gibson's, a highly traditional steakhouse in downtown Chicago. It was just the 3 of us. Leo was conspicuously absent, claiming he couldn't get his evening shift covered, though we all knew he was actively avoiding me out of pure bitter resentment. The dinner was shockingly normal. We talked about my VP promotion, my new real estate investments, and my father's retirement plans. No underlying tension. No passive-aggressive remarks. No exaggerated stories about Leo. When the waiter brought out a small chocolate cake with a single candle, my father stood up. He picked up his crystal glass of expensive red wine and looked directly at me. The busy restaurant around us was relatively quiet, the ambient lighting casting a warm golden glow. "Marcus," my father started, his voice thick with deep, uncharacteristic emotion. "For 29 years, I completely failed to see the incredible, strong man you were becoming right in front of me. I took your inherent strength, your fierce independence, and your quiet resilience completely for granted. I allowed my own fear of failure and my massive ego to dictate exactly how I treated you. And for that profound failure, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. My mother reached across the white tablecloth and gently placed her trembling hand over mine. She was crying softly, genuine tears this time, not the manipulative theatrical tears she used to weaponize. But today, my father continued, raising his glass higher, commanding the moment. I want to propose a toast to the man who finally had the profound, incredible courage to tell me no. The man who absolutely refused to be broken by a dysfunctional system. I am so incredibly proud of the beautiful life you have built. Happy birthday, son. And I raised my water glass and clinked it firmly against his wine glass. Thank you, Dad. It was the ultimate validation I had waited my entire painful life to hear. But the most beautiful, liberating part of that exact moment was realizing that I didn't actually need it anymore. I had already validated myself. I had already built my own net worth, my own massive career, and my own unshakable sense of self-worth. Hearing him finally say the words was just the icing on a cake I had successfully baked all by myself. Looking back on that horrific, humiliating day at Chicago O'Hare, I realize now that my father's slap, as painful and degrading as it was actually the absolute greatest gift he ever gave me. That sudden, shocking moment of physical violence permanently shattered the invisible, heavy chains of obligation that had bound me to a highly toxic family dynamic for nearly 3 decades. Sometimes, the universe has to literally hit you squarely in the face to wake you up to your own reality. I learned the hard, brutal way that family is not just a simple biological coincidence. True family requires mutual respect, basic human decency, and unconditional support. Blood does not give anyone a free pass to violently exploit you, emotionally abuse you, or treat you like a disposable burden to fund their own delusions. Setting firm, unapologetic boundaries is not an act of cruelty. It is the ultimate, necessary act of self-care and self-preservation. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you certainly cannot heal your deep wounds in the exact same toxic environment that made you sick in the first place. Today, my life is incredibly peaceful. I have a lucrative career I am deeply passionate about, a solid, loyal group of friends who represent my true chosen family, and a relationship with my parents that is based entirely on mutual respect and strict, non-negotiable boundaries. I am no longer the shadow standing behind my brother. I am the sole architect of my own incredible life. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out and allows us to bring you even more awesome stories. Thank you so much for watching.